Alright, so should have an array of objects similar to what's looking like here. Just go ahead and save those. Put your last name on the file name so we know who it is. You don't have to have this. I was going to draw one of those if I had time to show you guys that you can also make surfaces and apply patterns to them. But we'll get into that next class actually. But today we want to focus on finishing up kind of the introduction to parameters and creating a 3D parametric object that I'm going to have you guys cut out in the 3D printer, very small, so it won't be super crazy expensive, but it'll give you an introduction of how the 3D printer works and also how you can start doing three-dimensional parametric objects. Everything you load into Revit is a three-dimensional parametric object. A door, if you want to change the width of the door, that's a parameter that tells it to change the width. So starting to understand how these parameters work, hopefully you can then start to create your own families or understand enough at least to open up an existing family, maybe make some custom changes to it and load it back into your family, so into your project, so that it's not just a standard out of the box Revit door or something like that. All right. So let's go ahead and open up a new massing project. So I'm going to go back to the home screen here and go new conceptual mass. Open up massing project here. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to look at assignment 1, and we're basically going to create the parametric mass for part 2. Forgot to talk about assignment 1, but a couple of things. When you're doing parametrics, it's really important to dimension to the reference lines and reference planes. If you end up dimensioning to your model lines, sometimes the object won't flex, and it won't or it will flex, but it'll flex and not stay where you want it to stay. So just be careful about that. And that also has to do with this as well. So we're going to create some reference lines, and we're going to use the rectangular tool, and we're going to make sure that we're drawing on floor plan 1. And I'm just going to create a rectangle. I'm not really worried about exactly where it's placed at the moment, because with dimensions I'm going to center it to these two reference planes. So I'm going to use the aligned dimension tool in the modify tab here, and I'm going to set dimensions up to these reference planes, and we're going to want to set them equal distant. So now this this rectangle that I drew is now centered with the midpoint here at the center of these two reference lines. Notice that I'm dimensioning to the reference lines and the reference plane as well. And we're just going to make one more dimension from reference plane to reference line to reference line. Sorry. And I'm going to highlight this one, and I'm going to go to my labels tab, and I'm going to add a new parameter. And we're just going to call that W for width. And I'm going to grab the other dimension, create a new parameter of that width and length. Call that L for length. Now I just want to go up here and make sure that these are flexing properly. And it looks like they did flex correctly. So now that we know that they're flexing, it's probably a good idea to just do a save and name the file so that if your computer does crash, you don't have to spend 5 minutes or an hour or whatever it was to create that, and it's flexing properly. You want to make sure you save that. So we're going to create a form, a solid form, and we're going to pick the extrusion. And notice there's a dimension here. I'm going to go ahead and click this dimension line little button, makes it a permanent dimension. And I'm going to go ahead and now make a new parameter for that dimension. We're going to call that H. Say OK. And now let's see if this works. And it does. Okay. Has everybody followed so far? We need to take a little break. No? Okay. Let's do about five or 10 minutes. Get everybody on the same page. Because you have to create it in all lines here, reference lines. So these are reference lines here. So what you want to do is create reference lines and draw a rectangle. Isolate these dimensions the outside line. Just kind of place it somewhere else. And then, yeah, drag.
Click on one side.
It doesn't matter because we're going to start dimensioning, right? There you go. Yeah, and then use the dimension tool to dimension from this line to the reference plane. So you might just draw it just for and yep. So that line to the reference plane.
So what you do is click on that, click there,
Okay, so you do the same thing from side to side. Go back to 3D and then you so
all right, it's not working for you.
So flip. All right. So click on one of your dimension lines.
Okay, so
Sorry, I don't have a mouse.
So this one is either width or length. Do the same thing for the sharp. So move that to the side so you can see which is and test just click out of it. Change that to like 100. Okay, so go ahead and change it.
Julie, Patrick.
Okay.
So I can hear it.
So go ahead and okay. All right, now click on your reference. flex files. I mean, so you want a solid.
What happened when you first did this?
Generic mask. Okay, so.
So, her side, you can do it one.
Yeah.
So do the same thing, height. Okay, is anybody else? Okay, I'll try to hit these two at the same time. Since you guys.
I've got all these parameters in here, but
Okay, so I.
Yeah, there's usually one but I just want one
my setup.
Because I can set up so you're centered under our parameters tab, so go ahead and click that one.
Yeah, that's what I was getting creating
Okay, so move your box to the side.
grouping them into
Test all your dimensions and then apply.
Right, well, because you've got multiple,
That's what you're asking.
multiple ones.
So you can do it in that window. Just change the window and then watch it.
Four parameters, and then you can create new family types.
You're already.
I've already.
So have you added any plan one?
6x6x6.
Okay. So go ahead.
So if we want to say like
The dimensionalize your logo or
one value, or 44.
so you want to do one for length and one for width.
So yeah, it makes sense, but yeah,
It's getting itself confused, I would imagine.
because I have multiple.
Yeah, and it looks like instead of just kind of using the same parameter for this one, this
No,
height.
because this is actually set up as a round.
I got 370.
Yeah, probably, yeah, it's getting
Okay, so I should delete the
How many do you have?
four because we did it.
Reference
Yes,
lines.
delete. Go ahead and delete 3 of them, and we're gonna apply. I'll show you now. Once we you may want to change
So see the one right there?
well, I don't know.
Click on that. So now it's an actual.
We'll see. Good exploring.
Now open your families. Your shared height. Okay, now choose its heights.
Yeah.
Apply. Make sure that everything flexes correctly.
Under the view tab, you've got your user interface. You can get the interface navigator back.
Actually moving the squares.
Yeah,
And
like moving it up now to the triangle.
so there's a tab to grab one of the tab. Yeah.
I'll try to catch them all. The height.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, now we want to make one more dimension between the reference lines so that we can add a parameter to that dimension that flexes. No reason why we can that stays. Does that make sense? Yes. Same way you added these dimensions. Yeah. This reference line.
And then I can go there, you see that 40? Click right there.
And click anywhere outside.
Wait, how do you change the rectangle to square? Brian?
In the future, you may want to just label it W's. Yeah, because we're going to add a formula to this.
One thing you have to
So, once you, if that's done correctly, that should be approved. The number one question I've got, Brian?
How do you change? Not that.
Yeah, you would have to change the direction.
So it looks like you've over dimensioned it a bit. So basically we want two dimensions that are equal and then one overall dimension. If that makes sense. Okay, and then we'll add a parameter to the overall dimension. So why don't you dissolve the shape? So tab through until you have the back. And hover over something until it highlights the shape.
Alright.
Okay, let's dissolve the shape. So this is that discussion I had a couple days ago about model lines versus reference lines. We want to use the reference lines over model lines because when you dissolve it, you get this. And so let's just go ahead and now I'm just going to go ahead and click reference lines here. And select this dimension. Press equal.
Yeah. So if it's done, it's just like showing it to everybody.
So let's start with reference lines.
Finally, I have to mention my Okay, so let's do it again. So reference lines.
Dimensional tool.
It was one of the I was really not sure. I was like, finish.
I'm not sure if I'd like all the steps because when I go to say I use like one side.
Which you should have worked.
3D snapping. So we turned it off. Sorry about that. So dimension from this reference line to this reference line to this reference line.
I'm waiting.
And then this reference line to this reference line to this reference line. And use a little IQ So I'll just do one.
Oh, I got my stuff. I don't guess that.
Right now, it's just so probably because the angle is showing.
Okay, now that flexed.
Set your
Now one from here.
here. Set those,
Select those
try it out.
and create
Yeah, we already got that.
call that. Or just
Okay, and then just one for height.
You're right. You make sure that they flex and then create your form.
How do you,
You'll use up here, in the family types, you'll be able to change that.
oh, okay. Okay.
So,
So she was able, so you can create a make length and
They
width
can make it
parameter without actually
yeah.
assigning them to a dimension. So there is no dimension that makes that flex. So you're gonna have to dissolve the shape of and then dimension from here to here. And then apply to that.
Wait, how do you make the side ones?
What's that? So if you select on the dimension, in the options tab, there's something called labels. And you can add a parameter. But you have to have the dimension selected. So you're not quite ready to make it. It has to be one dimension, it can't be two dimensions. So go ahead and delete this dimension line. And select this dimension line and hit scroll down. There you go. And now do the same for this one. Okay, so now that's this line is equidistant to this line. Is equidistant, so it's a square. Okay. So now we want to make one dimension from this line to this line and drag it out here. No, to this.
And how do you change the little height of this with the cube?
So cancel out of that. And select this just like we selected this guy. And add a new parameter. Called edge. So go ahead and select this line to this line. Yeah. Now we can select one of those dimensions. It's all we'll do the same for the other one. Okay. Right. Just gonna get height in there. It's best like this corner. Broken.
You're gonna want to make what he did is create this piece, turn it into 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 this piece, and then so it has select radius and select that line, like it won't show, and then like
Okay, we're gonna, God, I forgot to hit pause. We're gonna have a nice long 10-minute break in the video. Alright, so we're gonna now go ahead and, now that we have all three of these flexing, so this thing's moving in and out, we can go ahead and create the void hole in the center. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to level 1 and I'm going to use my point element tool and I'm going to drop a point in the very center, aligned to both, have to have both of those lines highlighted, the reference planes. And you notice that the box is also highlighted. It's because I'm selecting the face, the top face of that box. And I'm just going to drop that point. And if I switch back to my 3D, you can see it sitting there. And I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go into my properties here of this reference point, and it says show reference, and I'm going to say always. And now I have 3 reference planes associated with that point. If I go into any elevation, you can see these reference planes. And I'd like to dimension from the level 1 reference line. I'm going to tab through until I highlight, which I just did. You can see that little blue line is highlighted. That's the reference plane of that dot. And I'm going to click anywhere to get out of that tool. And I can select that and also make that parameter my height. So when I change this height, that reference point also moves up and down. Okay? Is everybody getting that?
My, like, this bar thing on the side that says, like, level 1 feet, I don't have that.
You don't have that.
No.
The one on the right side here, says project browser.
Yeah.
Oh, navigation.
like, okay,
So tab through to select the space. So we've got this reference copy right there.
Okay.
Peers. One to another. So now we can. There's a little. Now we can add registration. So now that we have that,
Since you have it on the side,
Up here, change. So you have all of this. Change that parameter. All of it should just. Yeah, see what happens.
How do you do
So, do you have it placed?
Yes.
Okay, so you're in the elevation view. We want to select our, that line, which is the first floor reference plane, and go up to hover over this. You notice it highlights that whole line. So we want to tab through until we're just highlighting the reference line. It's hard to see, but it highlights that little blue line. Yeah. So now you have dimensions to that reference line. So we're always dimensioning the reference line as the reference line.
Anybody else?
Does it show up on the
3D view?
Go back to the elevation and select this guy, this dimension, and we're going to create a new label. New label, apply it to H. Now it should pop up in your 3D view.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you add a parameter to the height of that, like, did you hear that?
Yeah, so
Okay, so
Um,
go to your,
height.
like,
So you make it the same parameter because you want that to flex with the height of this box.
Okay, so
Right? So just select the H again, H 25. Look.
you're gonna do a line,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna want to, like, not the, you're gonna want to do like the out overview, like the
Nope.
dotted one, not.
Good. Let's go
And
back
then
to
you're
our
gonna want
3D
to select
view.
up here, but not this line, you're gonna want to tap through.
Yeah, so if you want to just see if everything flexes, you can go
Yeah,
ahead
you're gonna
back
want
into
not
your
this
family
line, but you're
types
gonna want this
and
line.
change the
Right
values
there, yeah.
to make sure that
And
the
then
whole
you're gonna
thing
want
flexes.
to,
Okay, yeah, you might want to make sure that this flexes length and width in the parameter up here in the family types. Change these dimensions to be something equal, just so you know that it flexes as well.
so like, and then you're gonna need to make so are they supposed to all go to even?
So you have to change that to be to say.
W is gonna need to be changed, which you can change right here.
Okay. Looks like it worked.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the whole thing's flexing in 3 dimensions.
Okay, add a new one, which is going to be we're gonna put it like right now.
Yeah, you have to select the reference point and in the properties dialog box,
Yes.
you have to say always show reference points.
Okay.
All right, so now we're back in the 3D view here, and we're going to, now that we have this reference point and it's flexing with the object, we're going to draw a circle on the flat surface reference plane of this point. And so in order to do that, we want to select our reference lines, choose the circle option, and we want to set our reference plane to that. And so I know, and you want to, the center of it, the center of your circle wants to be this point, this node that I've got highlighted. So you want to snap to that and then draw a circle. Okay. And we're going to make this a permanent dimension. Never had that happen. And we are going to add a new parameter to that dimension and call it R for radius. Say OK. And now I just want to make sure that this R will change. It's probably way too big, but it flexes. Okay, and now we can select our reference line here, the circle, and we can go up to our Create Form tab and say, let's create a void form. Yeah, it cut through. Okay. I'm going to grab the just try that with a model line and see if it makes a difference there. I'm going to make it a model line instead of a reference line. And I want to cut a hole. We're going to drag this down and lock that because it's locked now to basically what happened is when I drug this down, it recognized this reference plane and it highlighted that floor plane, and once I knew that was highlighted I could stop moving and lock it down, and it should have cut a hole all the way through the object. So I'm going to undo that and do it again just to show everybody. So I selected my reference circle and I unchecked the reference line and just made it a model line that seemed to have some difficulty with allowing me to drag the base of it down to the bottom. And then I said create void form. I asked it to do that, and it gives me an option to either make a dome or cut a cylinder through the object. And I'm going to pick the cylinder, and it highlights, it gives me these movable point references for the bottom of that void. I'm going to grab the vertical one in the Z direction and I'm going to drag it down until you see that highlighted blue line appear. So I know that it's associated with that reference line, and it asks me if I want to lock that. And I want to say yes, I want to lock it. And then when I click out of the command, it cuts the hole. Everybody getting that?
I just lost
Okay, so now that we have the length, the width, the height, and the radius of this circle flexing, and if we change the height, let's just, I want to double check that mine's working. Okay, the shape, the void is flexing with the shape, which is what we want. We can start to create multiple multiple shapes within this using our add new family type. So so we can say L equals W. No, L equals 100. What's going on here? Rename that. L equals 100. W. What'd I do? I can't type today. W equals 100. What?
That's M. I don't think that's gonna work.
Well, it doesn't matter what the name is, right? Just name it so that you know what it is. And W and M are very similar. They're just
L100
upside down.
Equal.
Yeah, why not? So we can change these to being those dimensions, right, and apply. And so now this family matches that line, and we can create a new one and type 2, say 50 feet by 50 feet by 25 feet by 15 feet. And I'm just going to say OK and name mine type 2 because I'm super lazy and I'm running out of time. And I can change these now to L equals 50, W equals 50, height equals 25, and my radius is 15. And I can hit apply. Woo.
Mine did that too.
Woo. Okay, so what's happening is this is not locked to that point, which is awesome. Never works out. So that's actually an interesting conundrum. How do we make that locked to that point? What's that?
Instead of locking it to the reference plane, lock it to the reference point.
That's what I thought I did.
No, you said plane, and you did the plane.
Oh, did I?
So we all did the plane.
All right, all right. So that was my mistake.
I think one of the reference lines were given problems.
Oh, you think that's why the reference line wasn't working?
Possibly.
Okay.
I can do it 12 times.
So, in order to fix that,
Delete it.
yeah, I'm trying to. Thanks, appreciate that help.
Okay.
So I can't delete it.
Sometimes that gives you-
Dissolve it is gonna end up dissolving the whole shape, won't it? Let's try this. Okay, so basically what's happened is this thing isn't flexing the way that I want it to flex. So I'm gonna have to redraw that void. And so I just deleted it. And I tabbed through until I selected it. Sorry?
Is the voice supposed to like go with the height?
It's supposed to stay in the center. And so mine was shifting off to the right or left. If yours isn't doing that, don't delete it.
I would think that's a problem.
So should we set the work plan too?
So the work plane should be set to this guy, but what happened was my placement point should be the reference point. Yeah.
Let me look at one else.
See, I thought I had that selected.
Can you change your dimension the way you're doing so I can see your circle? Yeah, just
This works for me like at home, no pressure, works.
Okay, so
and
then
then
how would I,
so go to the
get rid of and go back to
level one.
redoing the circle?
So you have
Control V
Yeah.
into
Yep.
that's one way. Another way is to actually select
Yeah, okay.
the void itself by tabbing through
Go ahead and
until you have it highlighted.
back.
Wait, I think where we're messing up is having the work plan set to the plane of
So just open,
circle
yeah,
or the
and then
point.
open the original.
Is that where we want it, or do we want to have it on 4-1?
So
We
Go back to the original?
we don't want it on floor 1. We want it referenced to the reference point itself, but we're drawing on the reference plane. So let me do that again. And I'm going to set this to be my work plane. But when I hover over this, and also in the options tab it says placement plane, we want, should be reference point. And now we are placing it on the reference point.
So how do you delete the?
So if I flex this back to here, it stays in the same place. Ta-da! We may not get to the exporting part, which sucks. We'll have to pick that up next class, but
so
okay. Is everybody on board with what was going on? Everybody get no? Okay. That was the problem with that, wasn't it?
so you'll really do that. Button in it, but
Yeah.
use the void supposed to change. So essentially oh, it's because I can set this.
I forgot to set my radius. That's awesome.
So go up and let's show me the
Okay,
description.
pause the video.
As soon as I set this.
So now that I have this shape, before I export it, I want to make it a 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch shape. So in my parameters, I can make these 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, and 0.25 of an inch. Press apply. You can see this thing is now super duper tiny, and I'm going to change my viewport scale to being 1:1 so that I can see it, A, but B, so when I export it, it'll export 1:1 in theory. So I go to my add-ins tab. When you have your STL exporter installed, it should automatically appear in your add-ins tab. So I click the STL exporter, and under the generals tab, I want to make sure that the STL format is binary. And our unit type is decimal inches, because the laser, the 3D printer, Jay's program is in decimal inches. So make sure your units and your binary STL format is binary and decimal inches. Categories is grayed out because we don't there aren't any categories as far as different types of objects inside the conceptual mass, so don't worry about that tab. Just general binary and decimal inches, and click save. And save it as an STL file and put it on a flash drive. Take it down to J. It should work. Should cut. Okay? And if there are any issues with yours that he says, oh, it doesn't work right, or it's not working right, it's probably because something is screwed up here as far as the dimensions of it, or this hole isn't quite cutting through the object completely. But I've tested this shape out. It should work just fine. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Okay?